Evie always preferred the deep night, not the kind with the stars scattered across the sky like broken promises, not the romantic midnight that poets write about, or the gentle darkness that cradles lovers as they whisper secrets to each other. No, I prefer the kind of night that is so deep, so absolute, that each makes people forget that he being watched. The kind of darkness that swallows everything whole and does not apologize for it. That is the night I live in. That is the night I am. You see, when you walk this earth for as long as I have, centuries bleeding into centuries, watching empires rise and crumble like sand castles before the tide, you learn that darkness is not the enemy. Darkness is honest. It does not pretend to be something it is not. It does not wear a mask or smile while plotting your downfall. People do that. Monsters wearing human skin do that. And on that particular night, this city was quieter than usual. You know that kind of silence, don't you? The one that settles over everything like a held breath. The kind that only comes when something terrible is about to happen or when I decide it is time to intervene. Let me tell you about that night. Let me tell you about justice. I was walking through the industrial district when I felt it. Fear. Not just any fear, this was the kind that has been fermenting, aging like a dog whining someone else's soul. Dense, old, familiar. The kind of fear that does not come from a sudden shock or a momentary fright. This was the fear of someone who had been afraid for so long that it had become part of their DNA, woven into every breath they took. I stopped walking. When you hear like me, you develop certain sensitivities. I can smell emotions the way a sommelier detects notches in wine. Fear has a particular bouquet, metallic, sharp, with an undertone of desperation. But this fear, the one drifting through the cold night air toward me, carried something else with it. Inevitability. It was the scent of someone who absolutely knew that something terrible was about to happen, and they were powerless to stop it. That particular flavor of terror is rare. Most people, even in their darkest moments, cling to a shred of hope. A maybe, a possibly, a this can't really be happening. But this person had no such illusions. The source was close. An abandoned warehouse on the edge of the district, one of those buildings that used to manufacture hope. Back when factories meant jobs, jobs meant dignity. Now each was just a shell, a concrete skeleton where shadows went to hide and predators went to hunt. I didn't need to use my enhanced vision to know what was happening inside. I'd seen the story play out 1,000 times across 1,000 different stages. The details change, the costumes, the set pieces, the names, but the script is always the same. Power, control, the strong preying on the weak. I thought to myself, as I often do in these moments, how fitting that monsters always choose darkness for their crimes. They think it protects them. They think the shadows are their accomplices. They forget who owns the darkness. His name was Rafe Calder. I knew of him, of course. When you live as long as I have, you make it your business to know the power players in whatever city you are haunting. Knowledge is currency in my world. Information is armor. Rafe Calder was what they call a self-made, one of those modern success stories that glossy magazines love to feature. Started from nothing, built a pharmaceutical empire, donated to charities, smiled at cameras, kissed babies at public events. His company developed treatments for rare diseases. He funded scholarships for underprivileged students. His name was on hospitals and libraries. A pillar of the community, they called him. But he did been around long enough to know that the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows. Rafe Calder's shadow was pitch black. Certain circles, the circles that only emerge after midnight, the whispered conversations in dimly lit bars, the knowing glances exchanged between people who seen too much. Rafe Calder was known for something else entirely. He was known as a man who believed his money could buy anything. I mean anything. Silence, compliance, bodies in shallow graves. He was a collector of power. Like all collectors, he was never satisfied. Each acquisition only whetted his appetite for the next. When you have that much money, that much influence, that meant lawyers on retainer, you start to believe you he untouchable. You start to believe you he a god. I didn't need my vampiric abilities to know all this. I just needed to pay attention, to listen to the stories people told when they thought no one important was listening. To notice which women in his company suddenly left without explanation. To see the out-of-court settlements that never made the news. But what he was doing that night, that went beyond even the rumors. Her name was Elara. I learned that later, of course. In that moment, as I stood outside the warehouse, she was just a heartbeat, a rapid, terrified pulse that I could hear even through the concrete walls. But what a heartbeat! Each was fierce, defiant, even in its fear. Like a small bird trapped in a cage, still trying to sing even as the bars closing. She was his assistant, had been for 3 years, started fresh out of business school, bright-eyed, eager, believing that hard-working talent would be enough, believing that merit mattered, believing in the fairy tale. How many times have I seen that story? Hundreds? Thousands? A young person with dreams, walking straight into a nightmare wearing a suit and tie. For the first year, everything was fine, professional, appropriate. She excelled at her job. He praised her work. She started to believe she'd imagined that she'd found her place in the world, that her career was on track. And then, slowly, the boundaries started to shift. It always starts slowly with men like you, Rafe. A hand that lingers too long on a shoulder. Comments that toy the line between compliment and something darker. Late night meetings that don't need to be late night meetings. And always, that unspoken threat hanging in the air. I can destroy your career. I can ruin your reputation. I can make sure you never work in this industry again. So she endured. She made herself smaller, tried to be invisible, hoped it would pass. Isn't it that what they teach you as to do? Keep your head down, don't they make waves. It's just the way things are. But predators like you, Rafe, they can smell submission. Each doesn't satisfy them, each teaches them, each makes them bolder. 2 weeks before that night, Elada had tried to quit. Professionally, respectfully, with 2 weeks' notice, a carefully worded resignation letter that said nothing everything. Rafe had laughed, actually laughed, as if she'd told a charming joke. And then he'd said, he not going anywhere, Elada. We haven't finished business. That when she knew, really knew, that she was in danger. And on that night, he'd called her to the warehouse, said it was about an important project, confidential, needed to be discussed off-site. She knew it was a trap, of course she knew, but what choice did she have? Call the police, and tell them what? That her billionaire boss made her uncomfortable? That she had a bad feeling? So she went. Because sometimes, when all your choices are bad, you just pick one, and hope you survive it. She was trembling when I felt her presence. Not from the cold, it was a warm night. She was trembling from that bone-deep fear, the kind that tells you your life is about to change forever, one way or another. I approached the warehouse with the patience of a creature who has all the time in the world. There is never a reason to rush. Time bends for me. E learned to let it. The building was one of those post-industrial corpses that cities accumulate, broken windows like missing teeth, graffiti like scars, the smell of rust and abandonment clinging to every surface. Perfect for someone who wanted privacy. Perfect for someone with dark intentions. I could hear them clearly now. Her heartbeat, rapid and irregular. His, steady and slow with that particularly revolting confidence. The confidence of a predator who has never been prey. He was speaking. That smooth, practiced voice that had charmed investors and seduced secretaries, lulled regulators and intimidated rivals. He being dramatic, Elada, he was saying, I simply want us to have an understanding. He valuable to me, very valuable. I take care of what is valuable to me. The way he said valuable, like she was a stock option, an asset to be acquired. I felt something stirring me, something that had generated the study decades. Not hunger. Not even anger, exactly. Purpose. Please, Elada's voice was small but not broken. Please just let me leave. I want to say anything. I just want to move on. But I don't want you to move on, Rafe replied. I could hear the smile in his voice. The terrible smile that men like him wear when they think they've won. I want you, Eddie, with me. We both know you don't have any other options. He moved closer to her. I could track it by sound, the shuffle of expensive shoes on concrete, the change in her breathing, the way her heartbeat spiked with panic. Don't she whispered, please don't And then I heard it. The sound they'd been waiting for, the sound that changes everything. He raised his hand, not to strike her, not yet, just to reach for her, to touch her face with those hands that signed contracts and shook hands with senators and counted money. Those hands that thought they owned everything they touched. I made my decision. Actually, that does not keep you right. There was no decision to make. This was inevitability. This was the universe correcting itself. This was darkness recognizing darkness in choosing which one deserved to survive. I entered. E dignity kicked down the door, announced myself with some dramatic proclamation. I am not a superhero I a cape. I am something older, something that predates your myths and legends. I simply walked through the door as if I'd been invited, which, in a way, I had been. Evil always invites its own destruction. The warehouse was exactly what I expected. Bare concrete, harsh fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects, old machinery left to rusting corners, a cage of metal in neglect. Elada was backed against a wall, small and trying to be smaller. Her eyes were wide, her whole body coiled like a spring. She was wearing a professional blazing skirt, heels she could barely run in the uniform of someone who did thought this was just another business meeting. Rafe stood between her and freedom. Tall, well-groomed, wearing a suit that cost more than most people make a month. Handsome in the generic way that men with money learn to be personal trainers and stylists and dermatologists, all working together to create an acceptable facade. He turned when I entered, annoyed at first the look of a man used to getting his way, irritated by any interruption to his plans. This is private property, he said, using the commanding tone he probably used in boardrooms. I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave. Now. E didn't respond. E didn't need to. Instead, I simply stood there and let him see me. Really see me. ADS is something most people don't understand about vampires. We can look like anything we want. We can pass for humans so perfectly that you'd never know the difference. I can smile and laugh and pretend to enjoy your small talk about weather and sports. But we can also let that mask slip. And when we let you see the ancient thing behind the pleasant facade, your lizard brain recognizes each immediately. Your DNA remembers being prey. Your ancestors feel echoes in your blood. I let Rafe see, not everything that would have been cruel, just enough. Just that whisper of ignis, that subtle indication that you wasn't what I appeared to be, that I was something older and hungrier and utterly outside his understanding of how the world worked. His face changed. The annoyance drained away, replaced by confusion, then unease. Then in this was the beautiful part: fear. Real fear. The kind he'd been inflicting on others for years. The kind he thought was beneath him, that happened to other people, weaker people. What are you? He managed to say. I still didn't answer. There was no need. I simply walked further into the warehouse, and with each step, I let more of my true nature seep into the air. The temperature dropped not dramatically, but enough to raise goosebumps. The lights flickered. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming harder to breathe. This wasn't the magic. This wasn't the supernatural in the fairy tale sense. This was simply what happens when something very old and very dangerous sheds space with something fragile and temporary. Reality itself strains. Elada hadn't moved. She was watching me with the same wide-eyed terror she'd been directing at Rafe moments before. I understood. To her, I was just another threat, another monster in the darkness. She didn't know yet that sometimes the monster is on your side. Rafe tried to run. They always do, eventually. That moment when the predator realizes he has become prey, it is almost comical, if it wasn't so pathetic. He made maybe 3 steps before I was standing in front of him. He hadn't seemed to move. That is the thing about vampire speed. It is not that we move fast, it is that we move between the moments, between one heartbeat and the next, between one breath and the inhale. We suddenly somewhere else. Please, he said, in hearing that word from his mouth, the same word Elada had said just minutes before filled me with something cold and satisfied. Please, I have money. I can pay you, whatever you want. Name your price. Of course he went there. Men like Rafe always think everything has a price. They've built their entire existence around that belief. Money is power. Money is protection. Money is the universal solvent that can wash away any sin, fix any problem, buy any person. I leaned in close enough that he could feel the unnatural cold radiating from my skin, close enough that he could see his own reflection in my eyes and notice something wrong about each, something that didn't match the laws of physics. He thought he understood. Your money, I whispered, my voice barely audible but somehow filling the entire warehouse, is meaningless. He tried to speak again, but I held up one hand slowly, deliberately. The gesture alone was enough to silence him. That is power. Not the ability to harm, but the ability to command silence with a single motion. Do you know what I am, Rafe? I asked, eschewing that whisper that somehow carried. Do you understand what esse repeniere? He shook his head, incapable of words. I am what happens when darkness gets tired of being ignored, I told him. I am the consequence you never thought would come. I am every fear you dismissed, every warning you laughed at, every line you crossed because you thought you could. His knees were shaking, literally shaking. This man who had made board members sweat, who had destroyed careers with a phone call, who had treated other human beings like a property, he was trembling like a child caught stealing cookies. And then, because predators are predictable, because bullies are always cowards at their core, he tried to go for the ladder again. It was instinct, I think. When cornered, he reverted to what he knew, control through intimidation. If he didn't escape me, maybe he could use her as a shield, a bargaining chip, a distraction. He moved toward her, his hand reaching out. That as when I grabbed his arm. Let me tell you something about pain. When you've existed as long as I have, you develop a very particular understanding of it. Pain isn't just sensation, it is communication. It is the body's way of teaching the mind, of creating memories so visceral that they can never be forgotten. Most people think of pain as something to avoid, to minimize, to medicate away. But sometimes, rarely, but sometimes pain is precisely what is needed. Not for sadism, not for revenge, but for education, for justice. When my fingers closed around Rafe's arm, he didn't squeeze hard. Not at first. I simply held him with the kind of grip that makes it clear there will be no escape. I let my true strength seep through, just a little, just enough. His skin, that pampered, expensive skin, began to frost under my touch. The cold of the grave, the cold of centuries, the cold of something that showed me to be alive but is. I watched as the color drained from his arm, as his flesh recognized something fundamentally wrong about contact with mine. He tried to pull away. Of course he did, but I held firm, and then I began to squeeze, slowly, methodically, with the patience of something that has watched empires crumble till dust. I heard the first bone crack, the radius, I think. Each image sound like a green twig snapping. Rafe's scream was immediate, raw, primal, the kind of scream that comes from a place deeper than thought, from the animal part of the brain that knows injury and death. Body didn't stop. The una next. Then the small bones of the wrist, each one separating with its own distinct pop. I could feel them giving way under my grip, the architecture of his arm collapsing like a poorly built house in an earthquake. You wasn't being cruel. I want you to understand that. You wasn't deriving pleasure from his pain. This wasn't about my satisfaction. This was about making sure he understood, truly understood what he had done, what he had been doing, what he would have continued doing if someone hadn't stopped him. Pain is a teacher. Some lessons need to be taught in a language the body remembers long after the mind tries to forget. He collapsed, not unconscious. You didn't allow that mercy yet, but boneless, all the strength gone from his legs. He knelt there on the concrete, cradling his shattered arm, his face twisted in agony. I crouched though beside him, getting on his level, making sure he could see my face clearly. Every woman you've hurt, I said, my voice soft but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Every person you've used, every life you've damaged because you thought your money made you untouchable. They all left marks on your soul, Rafe. Marks you couldn't see. I gestured till his arm. Now you have marks you can see. Now your body will remember what your conscience forgot. He was weeping. Great, gasping sobs that shook his whole body. Whether from pain, fear, or the dawning realization of his own mortality, he couldn't tell. Probably all three. Please, he managed between sobs. Please, Yeli, make it right. Yeli, pay them. Yeli, confess. Whatever you want. Just, please. I leaned in closer, so close my lips were almost touching his ear. The darkness returns everything, Rafe, I whispered. Every action, every cruelty, every abuse of power. You thought you could hide in the shadows, use them as cover for your crimes. But the darkness doesn't protect monsters like you. I paused, letting that sink in. It reveals them. Through all of this, Elara had been frozen against the wall. I stood up slowly, giving her time to process what she'd seen in turn till face her. She was still terrified. But there was something else in her eyes now, something I'd seen before in people who witness what I do. A question, an uncertainty, the beginning of understanding that maybe, just maybe, you wasn't there to hurt her. Her eyes moved between me and Rafe, who was still sobbing on the floor, his broken arm held close to his chest, then back to me. What are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The same question Rafe had asked, but with a completely different tone. Not demanding, not entitled, just curious. Afraid, yes, but with that fear starting to transform into something else. I looked at her for a long moment, this young woman who'd been trapped in a nightmare of someone else's making, who'd come here tonight not knowing if she'd leave alive. I am someone who makes sure the darkness doesn't only belong to monsters, I said simply. She stared at me, trying to make sense of what she'd witnessed, trying to reconcile the violence she'd seen with the fact that she was unharmed. They'd broken every bone in Rafe's arm but had genital later figure on her. Are you going to kill him? She asked. It was a fair question. I could see in her eyes that she was trying to figure out how she felt about the possibility. There was no love lost between her and Rafe, that was clear. But she was also a good person, the kind who is to believe the rules, justice systems, proper procedures, even after everything she'd been through. No, I said. Death would be too easy, too quick, too forgettable. He needs to live with this. Every time he looks at his arm, every time it aches in the rain, every time he struggles to button a shirt, he'll remember. He'll remember what happens when you prey on those you think are powerless. I took a step toward her, she flinched just slightly, instinctively. I stopped. He's safe now, I told her. He won't touch you again, won't even look at you again. His fear of me will last longer than his desire for control ever could. But, who are you really? What are you? She needed to know, needed to understand what had just saved her life. Does it matter? I asked gently. You were in danger, now you're not. That's what matters. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, processing, trying to categorize me into some box that made sense. Good, evil, human, other. Finally, she just nodded. A small, uncertain nod, but a nod nonetheless. Thank you, she whispered. Those two words, so simple, so human, they hit me harder than any weapon ever could. I nodded once, then turned toward the door. Behind me, Rafe was still whimpering, still cradling his ruined arm. I didn't look back at him. He wasn't worth the attention anymore. Wait, Elara called out as I reached the exit. I paused but didn't turn around. Will I see you again? Only if you need to, I said softly. Then I walked out into the night, leaving her there with her defeated monster, a whole new understanding that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places. The weeks that followed were interesting. I kept tabs on both of them, the way I always do after an intervention. Call each professional curiosity. Call each making sure my work had the desired effect. Call each whatever you want. Rafe checked himself into hospital that night. Told them he'd been mugged, attacked by someone in the industrial district. The doctors were puzzled by his injuries. The pattern of breaks was unusual, they said. Almost like his arm had been crushed in a vice, but with perfect precision. No collateral damage. No signs of a struggle beyond the arm itself. They chalked each up to a very specific type of attack. Human imagination can only stretch so far before it snaps back to comfortable explanations. But I knew the real damage wasn't to his arm. It was to his mind, his confidence, his sense of invulnerability. I watched him from the shadows over the following days, saw him jump at sudden noises, saw him glance over his shoulder constantly, saw him avoid dark places, stay in well-lit areas, surround himself with people. He did become afraid of being alone, afraid of the night. Good. Fear, when properly applied, is a vaccine. A small dose now prevents worse diseases later. Within a week, he quietly stepped off from several positions at his company. Health reasons, the press release said. Needed Jimmy to recover from a traumatic incident. His lawyers, those expensive, well-dressed sharks who helped him evade consequences for years, suddenly found themselves dealing with settlements, out-of-court payments to women who'd worked for him, who'd been let go under mysterious circumstances. Not justice, exactly, not the kind that comes with courtrooms and jail cells, but a kind of justice nonetheless, the kind that happens in the shadows, quietly, without fanfare. In Elara, she resigned the next morning, handed her notice, packed up her desk, walked out of the building with her head held high, no more explanations owed to anyone. For a few days, she seemed lost. I watched her always from a distance, never intruding as she wandered the city, clearly trying to process what had happened. She did look at her reflection in shop windows, touch her own arms as if to confirm she was real, unharmed. Trauma does not disappear just because the threat is gone. The body remembers. The mind needs time to understand that the danger has passed. But slowly, this is the part that made it all worthwhile. I started to see the fear leave her eyes. She started sleeping better. I could tell from the way she moved, more energized, less haunted. She started meeting with friends again, laughing at their jokes, participating in life instead of just enduring it. 2 weeks after that night, she attended a tech industry event, one of those networking things where young professionals gather to make connections and pitch ideas. I was there, of course, in the crowd, just another face among hundreds, watching. That S when I saw it. Her Ismail, not the professional Ismail she'd worn in those years with Rafe, the one that was all teeth and joy, a shield more than an expression. This was real, genuine. The smile of someone who'd been given a second chance and was determined to make the most of it. She was talking animatedly with a small group, gesturing with her hands, her whole body language or being confident. Nobody hunched shoulders, nobody looking over her shoulder, nobody flinching when someone moved too quickly. Her peripheral vision. She was free, standing there in that crowd, watching a lot of laughing live and breathe without fear. I felt something I hadn't felt in how long? Decades? Centuries? Not kitsch happiness. I am not sure I am capable of that anymore, not in the way humans experience it, but something close. A warmth in the cold space where my heart used to beat. A sense of rightness, of alignment between action and purpose. She was like a wildflower growing through concrete. That's the image that came to me. One of those small, stubborn plants that finds a crack in the pavement and just grows. Against all odds, against all logic, it pushes through the darkness in the way it reaches toward the light. It showed it to be possible. The concrete should win. The weight of the world should crush it. But it does not. Life finds a way, even in the most inhospitable places. And somehow, against all my cynicism and centuries of seeing humanity at its worst, that simple image moved me. This young woman who'd been trapped, terrorized, nearly broken, she'd found her way back to the light. She'd survived, more than survived. She was thriving. Evie spent so many years in the darkness that sometimes I forget there is still beauty in the world. Real beauty, not the manufactured kind. The kind that emerges from struggle, from survival, from refusing to let the monsters win. As I watched her, I felt her gaze sweep across the crowd. For just a moment, just a heartbeat, her eyes met mine. Did she recognize me? I don't know. It'd been just a shadow in that warehouse, more a nightmare than mine. But something flickered across her face. Not fear, never fear again, I hoped, but recognition of some kind. Acknowledgement. She gave the slightest nod. So subtle that anyone else would have missed it. But I saw it. Thank you, that nod said. I am okay now. You can go. I smiled a real smile, something I rarely allow myself, and nodded back. Then I turned and walked away, dissolving into the crowd, just another anonymous figure in a room full of strangers. But I carried that image with me as I left, the wildflower, blooming in impossible soil, reaching toward the sun. People often ask me, though usually only in my imagination, since I rarely have these conversations with anyone here, what it is like to be a monster. It is a fair question. I drink blood. I don't age. I am stronger than any human, faster, harder to kill. By any classical definition, I am a monster, a creature of the night, a predator wearing human skin. But it is what we learned over centuries of existence. Being a monster isn't about what you are. It is about what you do. We met humans, ordinary, mortal, flesh and blood humans who were far more monstrous than I could ever be. We watched them destroy lives without a second thought, pursue power without conscience, inflict suffering because it amused them or profited them, or simply because they could. Rafe Calder was one such monster. And there are thousands more like him, wearing expensive suits, sitting in corner offices, shaking hands with politicians and appearing on magazine covers. Predators who learned to smile for cameras while their victims remain silent, intimidated into compliance by money and power and the weight of a system designed to protect people like them. That is the real horror of the modern world, isn't it? The monsters don't hide in castles or lurk in forests anymore. They sit in boardrooms, they draft legislation, they fund campaigns, they heap pillars of the community. A people like me, we he supposed to be the scary ones. It's almost funny. Almost. If thought about this a lot over the years, what separates me from someone like Rafe. We he both predators after all. We both have power that ordinary people don't. We both operate outside normal social constraints. But there is a difference, each matters. I remember what it was like to be human, to be vulnerable, to be afraid. Those memories don't fade, no matter how many centuries pass. They etched into whatever serves as my soul, a permanent reminder of what I once was and what I could have become. That memory, that empathy, it's what guides my actions. When I see someone like Lara, terrified and trapped, I don't see prey. I see myself, centuries ago, facing my own monster. I see every human ever known who was crushed by forces they couldn't fight. So I use my power differently, not to dominate, not to control, but to balance scales that have been tipped too far in one direction. Some might call it justice, others might call it vigilantism. I call it necessity. You want to know the real tragedy? It's not just that men like Rafe exist. It's that the world is built to enable them. If you watch this pattern repeat itself across centuries, continents, cultures, the specifics change, the laws, the social structures, the technology, but the fundamental dynamic remains the same. Those with power each to prey on those without. In society, as a whole, looks the other way. Rafe case, this system protected him at every level. His wealth bought him lawyers who could bury accusations under mountains of paperwork. His philanthropy bought him a public image so squeaky clean that allegations slid right off like water off oiled leather. His connections bought him the benefit of the doubt. Surely such a respected man couldn't do those things. The women who came forward, they were labeled as opportunists, gold diggers, disgruntled employees with access to grind. Their credibility was questioned. Their motives were scrutinized. Their entire lives were put on trial while Rafe smiled for cameras and donated another $1 million to charity. It's a machine, the system, a well-oiled machine designed to grind up the vulnerable and spit them out while the powerful continue untouched. It's not new. We've seen versions of it every era we lived through. In the 1600s, it was noble privilege. Lords could do whatever they wanted to their servants, and who would believe a peasant over an aristocrat? In the 1800s, it was industrial power, factory owners treating workers as disposable commodities, knowing that complaints would fall on deaf ears. In the 1900s, it evolved into corporate structures where harassment was an open secret, something everyone knew about but nobody addressed. And now, in the supposedly enlightened age, the machine is more sophisticated. That's all. The language has changed. There are guided departments and sensitivity trainings and carefully worded policies. But scratch the surface and you find the same old patterns. Power protecting power. Money buying silence. Status creating immunity. That's why someone like him is necessary. Because the system wants to fix itself. The powerful want to suddenly decide to hold themselves accountable. The machine wants to spontaneously develop a conscience. Sometimes, it takes something from outside the system. Something the system can control or buy or intimidate. Something ancient, impatient, and completely embutchered by lawyers in public relations campaigns and carefully constructed reputations. Sometimes it takes a monster. I'm not the only vampire in the world, of course. There are others. Maybe hundreds. Maybe thousands. If we never bothered to count, we don't exactly hold conventions. But most of them, they hear exactly what humanity feels vampires should be. Predators who see humans as cattle, creatures who use their power for domination, for pleasure, for collecting wealth and influence like trophies. We met vampires who run criminal empires, who manipulate the stock markets for their own gain, who collect humans like art pieces, draining them slowly over years while keeping them enthralled, addicted to the vampiric touch. In other words, they are not that different from people like Rafe. They just have more tools at their disposal. I stay away from them. We have an understanding. My kind, they leave me alone, I leave them alone, and we pretend the other doesn't exist. It's a fragile piece, one that could shatter at any moment if I decided to extend my brand of justice till them did. But it would be a war I'm not sure I could win. And more importantly, it would distract from what I see as my primary purpose. Vampires, whatever else they are at least honest about what they do. They don't pretend to be saviors while destroying lives. They don't hide behind philanthropic foundations in respectability. The human monsters, the halfies of the world, they heroes in so many ways because of the dishonesty, because of the illusion they create, because they convince society that they hid the good guys, which makes their victims doubt their own reality. So I focus on them. The humans who twisted their humanity into something monstrous while wearing the mask of civilization. Sometimes I wonder what other vampires think of me. Do they see me as weak, as foolish, as wasting my immortality on pointless crusades for creatures that will die anyway? Probably. I don't care, because I remember what it was like to be human, to be vulnerable, to need help and have nowhere to turn. In that memory matters more than the opinions of creatures who've forgotten what it means to feel compassion. People fantasize about immortality. I know I can hear their thoughts sometimes, whispered wishes in the night. They dream of endless chimney, of witnessing history unfold, of accumulating wisdom and wealth across the ages. They don't think about the cost. I've watched everyone I ever cared about turn till dust. Friends, lovers, people who mattered all gone, their entire lives just brief flickers in the vast darkness of my existence. I've outlived governments and religions. I've seen ideologies rise and fall like seasonal fashions. I've watched humanity repeat the same mistakes so many times that history feels like a broken record, skipping endlessly on the same worn groove. The loneliness is, I don't have words for it. How do you describe loneliness that spans centuries? That compounds with each passing decade until each becomes a weight so heavy you can barely remember what each felt like to be truly connected to another being. I can't form real relationships. Not anymore. Even if I wanted to, how would that work? Any human I got close to would age and die while I remained frozen in time. I'd watch them wither, watch their memories fail, watch them turn to ash, over and over and over. It's easier to stay distant, to be the shadow that passes through people as he lives without forming attachments, to help when I can, then fade back into the darkness before anyone starts to wonder why I never change, never age, never seem to belong to the present moment. That why moments like Elara smile matter so much to me. They brief connections that don't require sustained relationship. Brief moments of genuine human feeling that don't come with the inevitable heartbreak of watching someone fade away. I can help someone, see them find their footing again, and then move on before the attachment becomes something that will haunt me for decades. It's a kind of emotional hitching run, I suppose, but it's all I can afford. The alternative is to become like those other vampires, to stop feeling altogether, to view humanity as a resource rather than a community I'm part of. I've come too close to that edge too many times already. The apathy that comes with immortality is seductive. It would be so easy to stop caring, to stop intervening, to let the world turn without me. But then I think about rape as victims, about Elara as fear, about all the people throughout history who needed someone to step in. Nobody did. I keep going, not because I'm good, not because I'm seeking redemption or trying to earn my way into some afterlife I'm not even sure exists, but because if I give in to that seductive apathy, then I become just another predator, just another monster using power for selfish ends. And it would mean the transformation that made me immortal also killed everything that made me human. So I cling to these interventions like a drowning person clings to driftwood. They what keep me tethered to humanity. What remind me that empathy and compassion aren't weaknesses, they the only things that matter. After I left that event, after I saw Elara smiling and free, I continued walking through the city. The night was too young not that each matters to me. Night is my element, my domain. I could walk these streets forever, an eternal wanderer, observing the human drama playing out around me. And as I walked, I felt it again, that scent on the wind, that particular flavor of fear that tells me someone, somewhere, needs intervention. Because the truth is, there are always more halfies, always more predators who think the darkness protects them, always more people who need someone to even the odds. The work never ends. Sometimes I wonder what I'm trying to accomplish. I can save everyone, I can stop every injustice. For every rape I punish, 10 more rise to take his place. This system that enables them, that protects them, that rewards them continues grinding on, indifferent to individual interventions. But then I remember Elara smile. that genuine, unguarded moment of joy. I think, if I can give that to even one person, if I can help one wildflower break through the concrete, then maybe it's worth it. Maybe that's enough. If we lived long enough to know that grand revolutions rarely work, systems are stubborn, power protects power, but individual acts of intervention, those can ripple out in ways you never expect. Elada wanted to stay silent about what happened. Not the details. She is smart enough to know no one would believe her if she described what she saw, but she really talk about survival, about finding strength, about refusing to be a victim. If someone will hear her story and find courage each, if someone else will hear their story. And on, ripples spreading out across the pond of human experience. That is my real power, not the strength or the speed or the immortality. It is the ability to be the catalyst, to be the thing that breaks the cycle, even if just for one person, even if just for one night. So I keep walking, keep hunting, keep intervening when the darkness gets too heavy and threatens to smother the light completely. Because that is what I am now. That is what I've chosen to be. Of all the things I could have become with this cursed gift of immortality. Yemi the thing that monsters fear when they close their eyes. Sometimes, when Yemi alone in the deep hours of the night, I let myself remember how I became this thing. I was young once, mortal, vulnerable, everything I spend my nights protecting now. The year was 1687. The place isn't Temato anymore. The city has a different name now. The kingdom has fallen and risen and fallen again. But I remember that night with the clarity that only trauma can provide. I was nobody special. A merchant son with modest prospects and even modest ambitions. I wanted to marry the baker's daughter. I wanted to take over my father's business. I wanted a quiet life in a small place, surrounded by people I loved. Simple dreams, the kind that should be achievable for someone willing to work hard and live honestly. But there was a nobleman, let us call him Lord Blackwood, though that wasn't his name. He wanted our shop, wanted the land it sat on. My father refused to sell. It was our family's legacy, passed through 3 generations. It wasn't just a business, it was our history, our identity. Lord Blackwood didn't take no for an answer. First came the pressure. Officials suddenly finding violations in our bookkeeping. Suppliers mysteriously unable to fulfill orders. Customers warned away by whispered rumors of poor quality goods. My father held firm. He believed in justice, in the rule of law, in the idea that honest people couldn't be crushed by the powerful. He believed the system would protect us. He was wrong. One night, men came to our shop. Lord Blackwood's men, though they wore no identifying marks. They beat my father so badly that he never fully recovered. They destroyed our inventory. They set fire to the back rooms. I tried to fight back, tried to protect my family. I was young, strong, full of righteous anger. I was nothing. They were everything. Power trumped righteousness, violence trumped justice. I learned the oldest lesson in human history. The strong do what they will, the weak suffer what they must. They left me for dead in an alley, broken, bleeding, drowning in my own blood and raging the bitter knowledge that the world wasn't fair, would never be fair, and there was nothing I could do about it. That is when she found me. The vampire who made me. She never told me her name, never explained why she chose me. Maybe she saw something in my dying rage that appealed to her. Maybe she was just bored. Maybe she thought I deserved a second chance. Whatever her reasons, she gave me a choice. Jairi, in this filthy alley, having accomplished nothing, he changed nothing. Or become something else. Something that could survive. Something that could fight back. I said yes. We spent centuries wondering if it was the right choice. The transformation was agony, dying and being reborn. Every cell in my body screaming as mortality gave way to something ancient and hungry. But worse than the physical pain was what came after. Because I couldn't go home. I couldn't be with my family. Couldn't comfort my father. Couldn't marry the baker's daughter. I was dead till them, even though I still walked and breathed. Or at least, I breathed when I remembered till, when I wanted to pass for human. I watched from the shadows as my father recovered slowly, painfully, never the same. I watched as our shop was eventually sold to Lord Blackwood for a fraction of its worth. I watched as my mother's hair turned white from grief and stress. I watched as the baker's daughter married someone else, someone who could give her the life they promised. I did nothing. Because what could I do? I was learning to be a monster, learning to navigate this new existence, e dignity yet understand what I was capable of. By the time I figured it out, by the time I became strong enough and skilled enough to take revenge on Lord Blackwood, everyone I loved was gone. My father died still believing justice had failed him. My mother followed a year later. The baker's daughter had her own family, her own life, and I was just a ghost from her past. But I still went after Lord Blackwood. Still made him pay for what he'd done, not because it would bring anyone back, not because it would erase the suffering he'd caused, but because someone needed to, because the system that protected him needed to know that protection wasn't absolute, that consequences existed, even if they came from outside the normal channels. That was my first intervention, the first time I used my monstrous nature for something beyond survival. I've been doing it ever since. Every wraith I punish is Lord Blackwood all over again. Every lad I save is the version of me that died that alley, the young person with dreams and hopes who got crushed by power they couldn't to fight. I couldn't to save my family. I can't do my own transformation, but I can try every single night to be for someone else what I wished someone had been for me. Someone who steps in when the system fails. Someone who evens the odds when power becomes tyranny. Someone who remembers that the vulnerable deserve protection, even especially from those who seem untouchable. After centuries of this work, I've learned to recognize the patterns, the warning signs that tell me when someone like Rafe is about to escalate from harassment to violence. Each starts with entitlement, a deep-seated belief that certain people, usually those with money, status, or power, are exempt from the rules that govern everyone else. They start small, testing boundaries, seeing what they can get away with. A comment that is just a bit too personal, a touch that lingers too long, a request that crosses professional boundaries but isn't egregious enough to report. They fishing, seeing who pushes back and who stays silent. And when someone stays silent when fear or professionalism or the need to keep a job prevents them from drawing a line, the predator takes notch. This is easy prey, they think. This one want to fight back. Then comes the escalation. Slower with someone cautious like Rafe, faster with cruder predators. But the trajectory is always the same. They push further, demand more, isolate their victim from support systems. They weaponize their power. If you tell anyone, yelly destroy your career, nobody will believe you. You're lucky to work it, don't ruin it by being difficult. The victim, trapped in an impossible situation, often stays silent, not because they weak, not because they complicit, but because the system is designed to make speaking up more dangerous than staying quiet. That's when I usually become aware of the situation. When the fear becomes so concentrated, so visceral, that it cuts through the noise of a million other human emotions and reaches me like a distress signal. I've learned to trust that instinct. When I feel that particular combination of terror and inevitability, I know someone is at a breaking point. Someone is being backed into a corner, and the predator is about to strike. With Rafe, I caught it just me. That night in the warehouse, that was the culmination of months of escalation. If he had intervened, Elaro wouldn't have walked out of there. Maybe not alive, maybe not in one piece, maybe not with her sanity intact. But if also failed, more times than I care to count. There are people didn't reach in time, situations didn't recognize until it was too late. The world is full of victims I never heard, never felt, never saved. That's the hardest part of what I do. Not the violence made peace with it, not the loneliness learned to carry it, but the knowledge that for every lad I save, there are dozens I don't, hundreds, maybe thousands. I'm one creature in a massive world. I can be everywhere, can hear every cry for help, can stop every monster. All I can do is keep walking, keep listening, keep intervening when the opportunity presents itself. I hope that somewhere, somehow, my actions create ripples. That LRS survival means one more person who refuses to be a victim. That Rafe's broken arm means one more predator who thinks twice. That the story of a monster who fights monsters spreads like a virus through the networks of the vulnerable, giving them hope that someone, somewhere, is on their side. You might wonder how I decide, how I choose who deserves intervention and who doesn't. It is not always clear-cut, after all. The world isn't divided neatly into monsters and innocents. I have rules, not written though I am not that organized, but principles EV developed over centuries, guidelines that help me navigate the moral complexity of what I do. First, power imbalance. I don't intervene in fair fights. If two people of roughly equal strength and resources are in conflict, that is between them. But when someone uses a position of power to prey on someone vulnerable, that is when I step in. Second, pattern of behavior. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has moments that he not proud of. I don't punish someone for a single lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness, an isolated incident. But Rafe, he had a pattern, multiple victims over multiple years, a consistent methodology, the kind of behavior that shows someone has made a choice about who they are and what they do. Third, system failure. I don't replace the justice system, I supplement it. If someone can get justice through not my channels, I leave them to it. But when the system protects the perpetrator instead of the victim, when money and influence create immunity, that is when I become necessary. Fourth, imminent danger. I prioritize situations where someone is in immediate peril. Rafe was not just harassing a lara he lured her to an isolated location with clear intent to harm. That is a crisis, not just a problematic situation. Fifth, proportionality. I match my response to the severity of the crime. Rafe got a broken arm and psychological trauma. That is significant, but it is not death. It is not permanent disabilities. It is pain and fear that will heal physically, even if the memory lingers. Would I kill someone? Maybe. If the crime was severe enough, if the danger was extreme enough, if there was no other way to protect future victims. But it is never my first choice. Death is too easy. Death lets monsters escape the consequences of their actions. Live with the memory of what they've done. Live with the fear of what might happen if they transgress again. That is more effective. That creates change, or at least prevents repeat offenses. But these rules they are guidelines, not absolutes. Every situation is unique. Every victim has different needs. Every perpetrator requires a different approach. And yes, sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I intervene when I shouldn't, or don't intervene when I should. Sometimes my judgment is clouded by my own pain, my own memories, my own desire for revenge dressed up as justice. I am not perfect. I am not infallible. I am just doing the best I can with the tools I have and the understanding I've gained over centuries of trying to make the darkness a little less dark. And maybe that is enough. Maybe perfection isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is just to keep trying, keep caring, keep fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. Because the alternative, giving up, giving in, letting the monsters win, that is not an option I can live with. Even if living means an eternity of walking through darkness, carrying the weight of every person I couldn't save, finding hope in the ones I could. I want to be honest with you about something. I am not a hero. Heroes are pure, noble. They save people because it is the right thing to do, because justice demands it, because their moral compass points true north. I am not that. The truth is, I enjoy it, not the violence itself. I am not a sadist. But the moment when a predator realizes they've become prey, when the power dynamic shifts and they understand, truly understand, that they are not untouchable, that satisfies something dark in me. Maybe it is because I remember being powerless. Maybe it is because I've seen too many terrible people escape consequences. Maybe it is just the vampire in me, that primal predator instinct that needs to assert dominance. I don't know. What I do know is this: the world is full of people who hurt others because they can, because the system protects them, because no one stops them. AI can stop them. Not all of them, not even most of them, but some, a few. The ones who cross my path, the ones whose cruelty calls out to me on the night wind. Is that enough to redeem whatever I am? I doubt it. Redemption implies I am trying to make up for something, trying to balance some cosmic scale. But I am not seeking redemption. I am not seeking anything, really. I am just doing what I do, being what I am. A monster who hunts monsters. A shadow that protects other shadows. A creature of darkness who has decided that darkness should belong to everyone equally, not just to those with money and power and privilege. So here I am, centuries into this existence, is still walking through cities that rise and fall like waves on a shore. Is still watching humanity repeat its patterns of cruelty and kindness, destruction and creation. The night is long, and there are still so many men like Rafe Caldo out there, thinking the darkness protects them, thinking their money, their power, their influence creates an invisible shield that consequences can't penetrate. They hear on, of course. The darkness does need to protect them. Each reveals them. Each shows me exactly where they are, what they he doing, who they he hurting. And when I find them, when their cruelty reaches the critical mass that triggers my intervention, they learn the same lesson Rafe learned. The darkness returns everything, every act of violence, every abuse of power, every moment of terror inflicted on someone weaker, someone vulnerable, someone who thought they had nowhere to turn. The darkness remembers each all. And sometimes, when the moon is new and the night is deep and the city holds its breath waiting for something terrible to happen, the darkness decides each time to collect. They forget, these modern monsters eat their suits in offices. They forget that the predator-prey relationship is older than civilization, older than law, older than the very concept of justice. They forget that for every hunter, there is something higher on the food chain. They forget that the apex predator in any ecosystem isn't the one with the most money or the best lawyers or the most connections. Each is the one who has survived the longest. We've been surviving for a very, very long time. Let me tell you something most people don't understand about darkness. Each is not evil. Each is not malevolent. Darkness is just absence. The absence of light, yes, but also the absence of judgment, of pretense, of the masks we all wear when we think someone is watching. In the darkness, people reveal their true selves. Some reveal beauty, the quiet acts of kindness when one is keeping escuro, the love expressed in whispers, the courage that does not need an audience. But others reveal ugliness, the cruelty they hide behind polished smiles in daylight, the violence they suppress when cameras are rolling, the complete disregard for others that they mask with charitable donations in public virtue. Men like Rafe, they think darkness is their accomplice. They think each hides their crimes, shields their secrets, protects them from consequences. They choose isolated places, late hours, moments when witnesses are scarce. They weaponize the darkness, but they hear wrong about what darkness does. Darkness does not hide. Each reveals. Each strips away the pretense, the performance, the carefully constructed image. In the darkness, you see what people really are when they think no one is watching. And always watching. That is what predators don't realize. They think the darkness is empty, that each belongs to them, that they hid apex predators in the night. They forget that so many things have lived in darkness so long that each is not a cloak, each is home. We walked through darkness for centuries. We learned its rhythms, its secrets, its language. I can read the night the way a scholar reads books. Every shadow tells a story. Every silence speaks volumes. Every act performed in what people think is privacy echoes through the darkness like a bell. So when Rafe chose that warehouse isolated, dark, perfect for his purposes, he wasn't hiding from me. He was revealing himself to me. He was ringing that bell, sending out that signal. I am doing what he showed me, holding who I can. I answered. That is what I do. That is what I am. Yemi the thing in the darkness that darkness itself fears. Yemi the consequence that comes when you mistake absence for emptiness, when you confuse shadow for safety, when you think the night protects predators instead of exposing them. The darkness returns everything, not because each is cruel, not because each is just, but because darkness is honesty, a way that light never can be. Light lets you hide behind performance in persona. Darkness shows what you are when you think no one is looking. And Yemi always looking. So Yeli keep walking these streets. Keep listening for that scent of fear that tells me someone needs help. Keep intervening when the powerful prey on the powerless. Not because Yemi good, not because Yemi noble, not because I think I can save the world, but because someone has to. And because when you live forever, you need something to fill the nights. You might call it justice. You might call it revenge. You might call it vigilantism or terrorism or playing God. I call it balance. The universe bends toward entropy, toward chaos, toward the strong crushing the weak. Always his, always woe. But sometimes, just sometimes, something pushes back. A wildflower through concrete. I smile where there should be only fear. A monster who chose to fight other monsters instead of joining them. Is each enough? I don't know. Probably not. But each is something. In a world this dark, sometimes something is all you can hope for. Sometimes I wonder what the future holds. Not for me, my future is already written, and endless cities of night stretching into eternity. But for humanity, will we evolve beyond this? Will there come a time when people like you Rafe are impossible, when systems of power can't be abused, when the vulnerable are truly protected? We've seen enough history to be skeptical. Every era believes each is more enlightened than the last. Every generation thinks they've solved the problems of their predecessors. In every time, new forms of old cruelties emerge. The tools change, the language changes, the specific mechanisms of oppression change. But the fundamental dynamic power seeking to dominate, the strong preying on the weak, that seems to be hardwired into human nature. Maybe I'm cynical, maybe my immortality has given me too long a view, me see patterns where there might be progress. Maybe each small victory, each Alada saved, each Rafe punished, is actually contributing to some slow evolution I'm too close to see. I hope so. I hope that centuries from now, creatures like me won't be necessary anymore. That humanity will have built systems robust enough and fair enough that power can corrupt. That the vulnerable are protected not by vigilantes in the darkness but by genuine justice. But until the day comes, if it ever comes, LLBR. Walking through cities that didn't exist when I was born. Watching technologies emerge that would seem like magic to my mortal self. Seeing the same old stories play out in new contexts. Intervening. Always intervening. Because hope isn't about believing the world will fix itself. Hope is about deciding to act as if your actions matter, even when you can't see the full scope of their impact. Every wildflower that breaks through concrete. Every person who survives and thrives after escaping a monster. Every ripple of courage that spreads from one saved life to inspire another. Those are my hope. Those are what keep me going when the weight of centuries threatens to crush whatever remains of my humanity. If you hear out there, if you hear someone like you Rafe, someone who uses power to hurt others, someone who thinks your money or status or influence makes you untouchable, let me be clear. You hear not. You might get away with it for years, decades, even. You might build an empire of silence around your crimes. You might convince yourself that you are clever, that you are untouchable, that the rules don't apply to you. But every crime leaves a trace. Every victim remembers. Every abuse of power sends out ripples that eventually reach someone who is listening. Maybe that someone is me. Maybe it is someone else like me. Maybe it is a victim who finally finds the courage to speak. Maybe it is the system finally working the way it should. But consequences are coming. They are always coming. The darkness you hide isn't the protection, it is just a delay. And when they arrive, when that moment comes where you realize you've finally crossed the wrong person or caught the wrong attention or matched the wrong enemy, you really understand what Rafe learned that night in the warehouse. The darkness returns everything. Every moment of terror you inflicted. Every life you damaged. Every person you broke because you could. It all comes back. So think about that the next time you attempted to abuse your power. The next time you corner someone who can't fight back. The next time you use your position to hurt someone vulnerable. Think about whether it is worth it. Whether the momentary satisfaction of domination is worth the permanent fear that someday, somehow, the scales will balance. Because they will. They always do. I make sure of it. If you hear someone like Elara, someone who has been trapped, terrorized, hurt by someone more powerful, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. Survival isn't a weakness. Enduring isn't a complicity. Doing what you have to do to get through another day, to keep yourself safe, to protect your sanity, that is not failing, that is surviving. Survival is its own form of resistance. I know it doesn't feel like strength. I know it feels like you are trapped, like you are powerless, like there is no way out. I know the weight of that fear, the exhaustion of constantly being on guard, the soul-crushing experience of having your autonomy stolen by someone who should never have had that power over you. But you are still ready. You are still fighting, even if that fight looks like a compliance from the outside. You are still you, even if it feels like pieces of yourself have been taken away. And there are the people who care. Maybe not people you can see or touch or call on the phone. But they exist. I exist. Others like me exist. People who understand that the system doesn't always work, that power protects power, that sometimes you need help from outside normal channels. You might never meet me. I might never cross your path. But note that somewhere in this world, there are the forces working to balance the scales. Imperfect forces, flawed forces, but forces nonetheless. And know that your suffering matters. Your fear matters. Your experience matters, even if the people around you try to minimize it, explain it away, or blame you for it. You are not alone. You never were. Even in your darkest moment, even when it felt like the entire world had abandoned you, there were people, creatures who cared about what happened to you. When you get out, you will get out. One way or another, remember to be kind to yourself. Trauma doesn't disappear just because the threat is gone. Healing isn't linear. There will be good days and bad days and days where you can take it to remember which category you're in. But you will heal. You will smile again, really smile, the way Lara smiled at that event. You will find yourself laughing without that background of fear. You will discover that you hear more than what happened to you, more than the worst thing someone else chose to do. You hear a wildflower breaking through concrete. And that's the most beautiful, most defiant, most hope-filled thing in the world. So remember this, the next time you walk through a dark alley, or feel eyes watching from the shadows, or sense something ancient, impatient observing your every move, the darkness doesn't always hide monsters. Sometimes, the monster is me. I am on your side.